Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. Welcome to another film review. Now and again, I like to jump out of the horror reviews because I love doing them. I really do. But there's more to me than just horror movies. I love all sorts of kind of films, really. But obviously, horror is my go-to genre. And tonight we're looking at something a little bit different. A 1991 British music sort of comedy film called The Commitments, directed by Alan Parker, and it's written by the guys that wrote the sitcom Porridge. And it stars well, quite unknowns at the time, but some of them went on to become sort of quite well known. And Andrew Strong, who plays the singer of the band The Commitments, went on to be quite a successful singer in his sort of own little right. It then sort of disappeared into obscurity. This film is based in Dublin, Ireland, and it's about this. It's set in a working man's sort of class sort of time in the early 90s, and life is a bit hard in Dublin. As you can see, this is obviously in the suburbs of it, and it's all sort of run down and all kind of like kids running around riot around the street, and there's kids playing in their local park, and there's horses in the park, and all this sort of crazy wonderful things going on. And we meet Jimmy, who's our main character in the film, and he wants to put a band together. He's unemployed, and he wants to put a band together. He goes to a wedding, and he sees this wedding band playing that are pretty dreadful, and he sees Andrew Strong there, who's drunk and stuff like that, and one of the female sort of leads from the film, that who becomes one of the backing singers in the film. Anyway, he talks to these guys, says, look, I want to put a band together and stuff like this. And then they start questioning what sort of genre are we going to do, what we're going to be doing. And he wants to do soul. And I don't blame him, because soul is one of those sort of, is a real working man's kind of music. Not the soul like um, the big sort of Gladys Knight thing. It's more of the sort of the northern soul sort of scene, or the sort of R&B sort of soul, that kind of thing. And it was quite prevalent in Ireland. There was quite a few sort of soul singers. You had Van Morrison and people like that in the 70s that were very sort of like very heavily soul influenced. And he wants to bring this back to life. So he decides to form this band, and he puts an advert into the paper, and we're at home with his family, and they keep getting visited by all these wonderful, strange people, punks and skinheads, and Boy George look-alike at one point, and nothing seems to be clicking. And then now and again, you get the odd one that come in. He gets a guy who plays the saxophone. He gets an old boy um, who plays the trumpet, and he seems to take the lead of the band. And Jimmy goes off to meet one of his friends. This girl works in this burger bar, and he gets her and two of the girls to come to be backing singers. And then the band seems to start to form, and they sort of get their sort of instruments together, and they start jamming, and they turn out some pretty cool sort of soul music. And Andrew Strong's got a really strong sort of soul voice anyway, and it's very, very cool. And they start doing some beating out a few classics like Mustang Sally and things like this, and it's really, really cool. And Jimmy starts getting them to watch all these old sort of soul singers like James Brown, Otis Redding, and stuff like this to get their sort of influences. So the band starts to form together, and the band starts to fall apart. It's one of those sort of things. And they get their first sort of gig at a sort of their sort of local church community centre, and that goes. I'm not going to tell you how it goes. You need to watch it and find out. What do I think of it? I love this film. It's one of my what do you call it? Sort of uh dear to my heart films. You know, a few months back I reviewed another one called Gregory's Girl, you know, the Scottish sort of comedy. And this is an Irish sort of comedy. And and they both bring back so many memories. Obviously Gregory Girl's in the 80s and this is one that's in the 90s, and it's sometimes good to go out of your sort of your regular genre, because otherwise you know you're going to get a bit bored, didn't you? I rarely go out of horror, but I'm very, very choosy about what films I really like outside of horror. I've got a very weird taste. I like The Commitments, Gregory's Girl. I like High Society with Frank Sinatra and Bing Crosby in that. You know, I've got a bit of a eclectic taste in films when it comes to that. Obviously, horror is my thing. Um, the pluses of this film, it is a Blu-ray release, so it's pretty cool. It's actually got a Blu-ray. It's the 25th anniversary release of the film. Um, it's really, really cool. The music is absolutely wonderful. There is a CD soundtrack which includes quite a lot of the cast that playing the instruments and singing the songs, which is really good. And that was quite a big hit. That album was quite a big hit because I used to work in a record shop, and that was quite a big hit when that came out in the around 91, 92. Um, the picture quality is cool. It's got lots of natural grain. It looks extremely 90s and extremely 80s and it's extremely Irish. And it's absolutely amazing. You get some wonderful shots around the sort of like suburban Dublin and all this sort of areas of there, and you get sort of like you can see all the sort of smoky social clubs and stuff like that, because there wasn't this the smoking ban that is in now at these sort of places, but back then they didn't have that then, so you get all that going on. Amazing watch. 9 out of 10. Absolutely fantastic film. I do love The Commitments, and Alan Parker is a great British director. Really, really cool. Yeah, it was really strange. The actual the writing of this is by Roddy Doyle, and the writers of Porridge, Dick Clement and Ian, whatever his name is, they were the writers for this film. So it's got quite a big pedigree behind it. And the film does flow at a good pace, although it kind of sort of, it's one of those films that goes at a good pace, but doesn't go nowhere, if you know what I mean. And you're just thinking, oh, are they going to make Stardom? Are they going to make it big time? But in a way, you kind of don't want them to, because you want them to be a working man's band, you know. And they were rife back in the day, mostly in the 80s and that, in the 70s. You'd have working man band that used to go around playing all the social clubs and stuff like that. You know, a lot of sort of Dixie jazz bands and all these sort of bands would go around playing the sort of social clubs, because a lot of places of work in the 70s and the 80s and early 90s, um, if they were a big company, they had like a social club. You'd have the post office one, you'd have the railway one, you'd have British Aerospace, and all these sort of companies would all have social clubs. They seem to have disappeared now, which is a real shame, because I think it brings a lot of people together. And this is what this film does. It draws on that sort of environment and shows you what it was like. A little bit like Phoenix Nights does with Peter Kay, because that's also built on the sort of working man sort of social club. And that was the era of that. And it's such a shame it's not around anymore. Commitments, 9 out of 10. Any of you guys seen it? If you have, let me know down below what you think of it. I know it's a bit different than a horror film, but like I said, now and again I will delve out from a horror film, just because I think it just gives me a little rest from watching them, and it gives you a look. Wow, just not really a horror film. He's still yawning, but he's not a watching a horror film. I always yawn in my videos, guys, because I always watch my films quite late at night, and I do my reviews after I watch the film, because otherwise I forget. And I'm so forgetful. I can't do my review the next day. You know, I get really forgetful as I'm getting older. I'm getting quite forgetful, which is one of those things, and it's a shame, because I see myself getting a lot more forgetful as I get older, and I don't like seeing that, because I used to be really knowledgeable and had a great memory, but now I seem to be losing that. But it is what it is. But until I've completely lost it, I'm going to keep enjoying my films and keep bringing my reviews to you. Thanks, guys.